Darby Mills, welcome to the Heart Dealer podcast. How are you today?
I'm awesome, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. I appreciate you dealing with my crazy schedule. Um, I have this amazing naturopath who we do kind of like naturopathy, meditation, sound healing, aromatherapy, a little bit of everything all in one. And it ran a little late. So I'm apologizing for being late.
It's all good. It's all good.
Um, the Queen of Scream, not to be
Oh,
mistaken with Jamie Lee Curtis, who's the Queen of Scream within horror.
yeah, for sure.
When you first heard that title, like how did that resonate with you? Did you feel like it was authentic? Did you latch on to it? Was it a natural transition into the role?
It. I thought it came from the Tellus documentary titled "Queen of Scream," but as I'm doing this project called True Story that I'm 2 years into creating right now, I found an old Vancouver magazine that didn't necessarily call me the Queen of Scream, but it was the Queen and she screamed or something along those lines. So that might have been, and that was like 1983. So it's been my moniker for a while. Yeah.
Well, you can definitely wail, and I think metaphorically, as we were just discussing, you're kind of screaming for rights and being outspoken about the industry in general. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Yep. It's a full-time job.
Well, there is a lot to unpack. Let's dive in. I love to, talk about, as I mentioned, culture and history and your story. That's what I find the most fascinating. You are from BC, was born in Vernon, I think you said.
Yep.
Uh, but then somehow it ended up in Kamloops for a little while.
Uh, my dad was the manager of government liquor stores back then. That's all there were government liquor stores. And he transferred a fair amount to open new stores for the government and had the opportunity to go to Kamloops Valley View and open up the liquor store in Valley View and stay there. So the family moved, I moved, my brothers and sisters all stayed here in Vernon, and I moved and became an only child and graduated from Cam High in Kamloops and immediately loaded up as the True Story documentary says, my silver AMC Gremlin and headed off to Calgary to to find my to find my band to find my future.
Uh, I have to ask, so I have a bit of a Kamloops connection. My ex-wife's family is from there. She grew up there. My kids vacation there all the time. They have family in, oh my goodness, the Sun Peaks, in the Sun Peaks Resort. So like that
Yep.
whole area, do you know what pachos are?
I do not.
Okay, good. So you're not the only one. There's a restaurant in town that serves these like lattice fries with onion and bacon bits and stuff
Huh.
all over them. And apparently it's the only thing that everyone knows Kamloops for, so you don't, which is good. I'm not
I
the
did,
only
I
one.
did, I did leave in 77, so, or 78, so it might have become the thing after I left. I've been gone a long time.
Very fair. So we have so much to unpack, as I mentioned, and I'm so curious about a lot of the things that you've done in your life because I think they lead to the mindset that is behind Darby that allows you to keep going and pursue and be outspoken. But like when did you discover music? When did it bite you? How did it bite you? Everyone's story is different. Was it an album? Was it a live experience? Was it, oh, I can sing? Talk to me about how you first started.
I was a toddler. My parents had a cabin, on a lake called Mabel Lake, which is just north, south, no, northeast of Vernon. And, my dad was a singer, a soprano, and at the campfire, again, this is part of the story I tell in True Story. Um, he would sing songs, and he had a beautiful voice, and, I was barely walking when I remember him belting out songs, and the lake's about 3/4 of a mile wide, I think, and there would be bonfires all the way down the lake, all the way through to a little town called Lumby, and, after he'd finished singing a song, applause would come out from the campfires all the way around the lake because, of course, it travels, sound travels, and, even at that age, I knew, I'm like, "That that is so cool." I mean, people love that, and, yeah, that was in the back of my mind. I would put on plays in elementary school every assembly. I was desperate to be on a stage from early on, so I, thank or curse my father for putting that in my soul, and, then I became a figure skater. You'd mentioned you were an athlete for years, and so was I. I skated from grade 1 right through to graduation as a figure skater and had my fair share of accolades from that adventure. So I spent a lot of time in arenas, which I continued on as a concert, band performer across Canada and wherever else we went. But yeah, it was my dad who basically branded that into me early on.
What was, family life like for you? Did you have a tight relationship with your dad, with your family? How much of it portrayed or then that informed you and who you are as a human being?
I had the best family. I have no family woes other than the typical ones, perhaps. My mom and dad were the best. They did nothing but supply for us. I have 3 brothers and sisters, and, my both my parents I lost my dad the first year of COVID due to COVID, and my mom passed a couple years before that, but no, I was so very, very lucky, and maybe that's why I don't know why I have a sense of self. I don't know. I I don't know why I go through what I go through. I can't answer that stupidity. I don't know, but no, I'm very grateful for the family life that I had taken care of every day.
I love to hear that, and I always ask because I found it fascinating, early on into this new interview series, I started to ask this of artists who, I grew up listening to, and a lot of people assume that there's this natural story of, broken home and was down on my luck and I was broke and I just had to keep going. And I find it very funny that so far, the majority of the time that I ask that question, it's always, no, I had a fantastic family. In fact, they were my number one supporters and they
Yeah.
encouraged me and they were driving me to gigs. And so it continues to trend towards that
Mhm.
answer.
Wow,
Um,
that's surprising, yeah, because I would have thought I was a rarity and didn't deserve what I've, achieved because I didn't suffer, um, but I worked for it. There's
yeah.
always that.
100%. I think that that's what it comes down to is hard work, and I think that I'm already starting to see that from you and from your childhood is that, love and encouragement and being inspired by your dad, and then going into figure skating, which from what I understand is extremely competitive. But then there was also in there somehow Taekwondo. I think you're a black belt.
Yeah, well, that came much later. My
Okay.
oldest son, who we spoke about before we got on the interview, um, he was a very, very slight, white-skinned, red-haired, blue-eyed young boy, and at about 5 years old, he had the gift of talk, and I could see him getting himself into situations that he needed to learn how to look after himself. So I enrolled him at 5 into Taekwondo, and my younger son at 2.5 started coming every day to Taekwondo, and both of them are black belts or above. As a
Oh,
matter of
nice.
fact, my youngest got his black belt in grade 3. He was very, very good, and, yeah, so I was one of those used to be called skating mothers, um, but I would sit on the side and if the kids weren't paying attention, including if my own sons weren't paying attention, but if there were other kids not paying attention to the teacher, I would yell at my sons, like, "Clayton, listen!" Even if it was someone else's kid that wasn't listening, just to try to get the point across, like, "Pay attention. This is expensive stuff." Anyway, so finally the teacher said, "You need to start training and get out on the floor," right? So that's kinda how that happened. I did, and yeah, 5 years later or however long later, I achieved my black belt and became a teacher after having broken my ankle, terrible break. Uh, yeah, they said, "Well, if you can't do, come out and teach," the old saying. So I did. So I taught for about 6 years, 7 years, and finally decided that it was time to get back into music full time.
And
And
so
so I did that.
I apologize. So that would have been roughly 20 years ago that you discovered Taekwondo?
Um, yeah, because I've been out now for almost 10. So yeah, I participated for about 15 years. So yeah, a while ago now. I probably couldn't defend myself if I had to at this point. Yeah.
How handy would it have been to have been a black belt in Taekwondo when you were starting in the music industry as opposed to after?
I don't know. Uh, I don't know. I don't know. I was lucky. I didn't have too many drunks come up to me and abuse their fandom in the sense a few people I mouthed off, and I've been, thanks to social media, reminded of how rude I was to them back in the day, and it's like, well, normally I wouldn't have been rude unless perhaps you were really drunk and in my face, but,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Like another black belt friend of mine says, "Geez, don't tell anybody you're a black belt because they'll challenge you." And it's like, "Oh, yeah, okay. I'll keep that a secret then. So don't tell anyone."
We won't tell anyone else. I was being more cheeky in the sense that, the industry can be very challenging and
Mhm.
with, figure skating and the focus on, the mindset that one needs to do that. And then obviously the mindset that's instilled in us through things like martial arts, maybe there would have been more of um, a calm or an ability to navigate difficult situations like some of the stuff that you've experienced.
Yeah. I don't know if I needed any more encouragement to stand up for myself. I got into enough trouble for doing that as it is, but it was a wonderful experience, I think, for my children to go through the discipline that
Mhm.
you needed and the respect, bowing as you entered the floor, bowing as you left the floor, and no cheeking back. I'm so glad my kids went through the program, and they're very respectful children. And I know now that they have, at least when they were training, the ability to defend themselves if need be.
Yeah. I did martial arts when I was younger as well, and I mean, I've been in and around, semi-professional sports, and, I think the main takeaway is really mindset. How you stay calm, how you stay centered and focused, that these things aren't necessarily weapons, but they're tools for us to better regulate and then be better prepared for whatever comes our way. So that's where I was going with that, but why don't we continue where we left off from Kamloops and the Gremlin and driving away? So you have left figure skating behind, you've twirled off the ice, and you're like, I'm gonna be a rock star. You go to Calgary, and then what happens? You become a skiing champion.
No, nope. Got a job at a record store, Mr. Sound Music, in South Center Mall in Calgary, and I worked there for about 6 or 7 months, and, I auditioned for, ugh, tons of bands. I got into a few, then landed a job with a band out of Vancouver called Forecast, and then got fired from Forecast, and then moved back to Calgary because the scene was more happening in Calgary. Joined a band in Calgary, can't remember what, oh, started with a G. Anyway, lost that job, moved back to
Yeah.
Vancouver, moved back to Calgary, um, auditioned for a band in Edmonton called Business Before Pleasure from New York, a seven-piece black band, if I can say that with respect.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I worked with them for about a month on the road and ran into a band called Steelback. And we both had 2 weeks of shows in Lethbridge, Alberta. And I would run over on our break because our times were offset. And eventually I got up and jammed with Steelback after the first week. And by the end of the second week, they're like, why don't you come to Victoria and join our band, which I did. I went back to the dressing room of Business Before Pleasure. We had been paid for the first week. Actually, I think this was the end of the second week. And I was smart enough to put my purse behind a mirror. And I got back from Steelback's, playing with Steelback on the break, and they had all been robbed from the
Oof.
band dressing room. And I was the only one that didn't get robbed. And here I am quitting. It was so unfair. I felt so bad. I said, I'll give you 2 weeks notice. We'll do two. And they're like, no, whatever, just go. I still feel terrible about that day. So packed up my stuff and jumped in the van with Steelback and was with them for about a year. And that's when Brian McLeod gave me a phone call and said, you want to join the band?
That's incredible. So, one of the things that I found fascinating, and I'm sure we're going to come back to this throughout this conversation, is mindset, is tenacity. The Telus documentary, like one of the first things that you say in that is that I just had to go. I had to do it because I wanted to know. Let me see if I have the quote here. I want to go. Basically, that you want to die trying. That you essentially have this mindset where doesn't matter when I'm restarting, how I'm restarting, how many times I have to restart, I'm going to try. I'm going to see if it works, and that's just how I am. When did that mindset start to take place for you? Because even now, with this anecdote that you shared, with like, trying so many different jobs and different bands, it seems like that was already that drive was already in you.
I think where that comes from is the fact that I truly enjoy performing from from a 2, 3 year old getting on a stage of whatever stage it is and giving of whatever it is that I have to give. I love singing. Um, I don't get to do enough of it framing a Jackson Brown song.
Right.
Um, it's just I was put here to do something of that nature, whether it was to be a star or just that's what fulfills me. I don't know, but I'm that's that's just part of who I am, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I really respect it, but it seems like it goes deeper than music because same documentary, you talk about how you leverage social media, Facebook to connect one-on-one with your fans directly, that you'll literally wake up and take the time to wish people happy birthday and reach out. It obviously sounds like you were very active in your kids' upbringing and instilling in them things, spending time with them, teaching them. So it's not just music. Uh, was your whole family like that, or did you just start to apply those lessons to everything in life?
Ah, my dad got drafted by the Red Wings and played for the Oshawa Generals while he was waiting to be lifted up to the Red Wings. And that's during the original six teams. Um, my mom, when I was, my mom was Queen Silver Star. Actually, it was called Miss Vernon Day's Queen. That's before the Queen Silver Star became Queen Silver Star. So my parents were performers to some extent. Not that they ever pushed that. I didn't even know my dad went through that until I was about 14 years old. Um, and at the same time, he was drafted by the Red Wings. He was given a spot as a singer on a CBC talk show in Vancouver. that he had to make the choice of was he going to be a hockey player or was he going to be the host singer of a talk show in Vancouver, and he chose hockey, which was, here over skating, I chose performing. And then my mom, when I still lived here in Vernon, so I must have been 8 or 9 years old, opened up her own, not jewelry store, but a trophy store where she did engraving and put trophies together. So she was always very self-motivated so, none of that was in my brain at the time when I was growing up, but I
Mhm.
think that it was, unconsciously seeing how they were individuals and they had goals and they achieved goals and they worked hard for these things. N I don't know if that's born into you or if it's observed or what, but again, I don't know where it comes from. I don't know where or why I'm stubborn, but I am, so, I'm grateful for it, mostly.
Uh, I appreciate that. I think that it's important to, know what our weaknesses and strengths are and leverage them. I mean, you mentioned the word stubborn. Stubborn doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can be a very positive thing. It doesn't have to have negative connotations. And if one recognizes that they are that and then they leverage it for the things that they're trying to accomplish, that's amazing. I love to talk about mindset and mental health because it is such a prevalent topic that is becoming more and more discussed. And I think we as a society for a long time had mental health like meant that someone had issues, meant that it was like a big issue or medication, but it's not. It's simply the health of our well-being day to day. And it could be something as bad as getting or as insignificant as getting cut off or a fight with your partner that still contributes to mental health. And I'd love to ask about like tips and tricks. You in that same video said, that you've bounce back, in your words, like 6, 7 times, you just kind of keep going back. S To what do you owe your resilience? Are there tricks that you use? Do you, like, wake up and have a mantra? Like, what are some of the things that you do to keep Darby Mills, like, going?
Just I mean, it's, just the desire to do it and, the stubbornness of, "I'm not gonna let someone else decide what I'm allowed to do,"
Mhm,
and I'm not proud to say that, that's the stubbornness, and also I discovered, thanks to COVID, a little bit before COVID, my mom had passed away, and I we were going through her possessions and finding places for them, and I came across a black magic chocolate box that I opened up going, "What's in here?" And it was full of rocks because I collected rocks from the lake that my parents had a cabin at that we still own today. So that's like 70 years my family has owned this cabin. And I was like, "Oh, that's right. I was fascinated with rocks. They weren't precious at all, just only to me." And so I made a necklace out of one of them and was wearing it. And I had a girlfriend say, "That's really cool. Where'd you get that? Whatever." So I eventually made necklaces for all my girlfriends. And 9 years in, I've now made and sold over 500 necklaces and pieces of jewelry simply by an accident that I found an old box of rocks. And the reason why I'm telling this story is through COVID, not only learning how to video edit, I spent many, many, many hours um, creating jewelry.
mhm,
And if you are a creative soul, if that's what levels your whatever, it's so important to continue to do that. And I found that out so strongly, so vibrantly during the last, well, just before leaving the Headpins in 2016, it was like, wow, you know what? I'd go to bed at 3 in the morning having created 6 or 7 pieces that day and feel fulfilled. And
mhm,
so that to me, or that for me anyway, has been something that has kept me from jumping because if you've got nothing to wake up for, whether it's important to someone else or if it's important to you, um, find that purpose and do it, deliver it, and be it. And very lucky that I found that by accident. And it's still today. I mean, I just got an order for 20 pieces, so I'm frantically trying to get that together before I head. You'd said you're at the doctor before you got here. I've got 3 doctor's appointments, eye appointments. I'm going blind. Um, yeah, just stay active, so important.
Yeah, being active, finding purpose, that's a very, very important one too. I find that, when I wake up and I know that there's something that inspires me that I have in front of me, it gives me all the desire to just get up and get going. You said something else in there that was really interesting. I think that you said, you talked about not letting someone else make a decision for you. And I love that because I often reference boxing in life with my kids and my partner and my friends, and I say, so I don't remember where I heard it, but never leave the fight in the hands of the judges. Never, because you don't know how they're gonna score the match. And if you want to win, there's a good chance that you won't if you leave it in their hands. And really, for me, what that means metaphorically for life is that you have to control your destiny. You have to do everything you can to win. And it sounds like you've been doing that for a very long time. So why don't we get into that next phase? You said that's when you met your next, musician friend, and then the Headpins era started. Talk to me a bit about what was going on.
Well, it was a whirlwind. Uh, the Headpins were hastily, I'll use as a descriptive word, put together because Chilliwack, which Brian McLeod was in at the time, had just lost their record deal to Shelley Siegel and Mushroom Records because Shelley Siegel, the president, had passed away unexpectedly. So they were frantically trying to figure out what to do with Chilliwack. They were shopping for a new deal. And so Brian put the Headpins together and were playing in the bars. And back in the late 70s and early 80s, there were, I don't know, 15 rock bars in Vancouver. I mean, you could play for 2 months or however long, 6 days a week, and just go to the next bar up the street, and then the next bar, and then the next bar. You didn't have to go out on the road. You could just work, work, work. I mean, I did more shows in the 3 years I spent in the bars in Vancouver than probably I've done in the rest of my career because of how much work there was. I really got to hone my craft as a 20, 18, 19, 20-year-old. Um, and so the singer they had at the time was Denise McCann, and there was issues with her. And yeah, Steelback was playing in one of those bars one night, and they came out. Then Steelback was an A-list band for a bar band, and they came out, saw me a week later. Basically, I had left Steelback. I was in the Headpins, and boom, we had like 13, 14 songs in our roster, but we were still doing the 3 sets a night. So we'd do the first set, second set, repeat the first set. And nobody cared because it was Brian McLeod. And yeah, then Solid Gold Records came out from Toronto to sign Chilliwack to a deal. And again, this is all in my documentary, the live
Yeah.
documentary, true story. Um, and the Headpins were playing. And so Steve and Neil, who were the presidents of Solid Gold Record, came out to the bar that night to see the band, and boom, I got signed. The only artist to be signed to the Turn It Loud album because Brian and Ab, who was the bass player, were signed to Chilliwack. So yeah, I got signed to Solid Gold Records, and lo and behold, I was the one that got sued for the $500,000 debt for the Headpins when I got fired. So fun, but anyway, so yeah, Yeah, we did a couple more months in the bars while Brian was putting together some tunes, and we went into the studio and wrote the rest of the album while we were recording. The album came out. The Lock Up Your Sons tour happened. Brian and Ab went back into the studio with Chilliwack, and I went off without Brian. Um, and did the Lock Up Your Sons tour. And no disrespect to Toronto, because huge respect for that band, but we were getting some really good reviews on that tour, so much
Yeah.
so that we got signed to Atco Records by the end of it for a worldwide deal, or American deal anyway. And then we came back to Vancouver at the end of that tour and played a show at the Max Bell Arena. And Brian came back and did that show with us. And lo and behold, he left Chilliwack and came back to the Headpins full time after that, because we were just doing so good. We were
Yep.
just knocking it out of the park. And I thought it was 5 years, but in reality, in 4 years that I was with the Headpins, we wrote, recorded 3 albums and toured that whole time. So unbelievable the amount of product that came out in those 4 years. I think about it now, going, man, I had to sit and record 3 albums and write 3 albums. Um, yeah, uh, uh, we did way better than I think we get credit for,
Yeah.
perhaps.
So I appreciate the summary, and it's for essentially anyone that doesn't know it, because a lot of people know the history. I want to talk about more the outcome of that, but first, what I find fascinating is that the scene here seems to be really small. So I early in this podcast had a guest on, Darren Moore, who lives in Vegas now. He's Icons of Rock, and he comes from the Harlequin camp. I'm actually working with Darcy Deutsch, formerly of Prism, and Simon Chaos, who we've
Yeah.
just now publicly announced that he has a memoir coming, which we're working on. How much of the scene at that time was like everyone just intermixing musically? It sounds like a lot of people rubbed shoulders and worked with each other and knew each other. Is that accurate about the rock scene in Canada at that time?
I can only speak for what I experienced as, let's say, a newbie, having Brian been with Chilliwack and Garrison Hill before that. And, Ab had been around for a while. And we were pretty tight knit unit inside. And the reason why we toured with Toronto was because they were signed with Solid Gold as well. And so I didn't feel that we were wide open and everybody's loved. I didn't feel that. I sorry to to have to say that. I felt it was very, hmm, our camp, their camp. Um And
Fair.
I still feel it's very much that way right now. I mean, Darren and I have a story we could share, but unless if he hasn't shared it, I won't. We've experienced something with a particular individual. I know Darren, and yeah, uh,
That's okay.
yeah.
Maybe me and Darren need to jump on and talk about the stories of the past. I'll bring it up with them, we'll see. So I know that the band starts, and then you, I think, had 2 albums out. Things are going really well, but then the label at the time goes bankrupt, as you mentioned.
That was
And
his
then you
only one album when Solid Gold went insolvent, to give you the right term, which is basically bankrupt, but means something different but the same.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a whole myriad of questions there. Is like, if an album's doing so well, how does the label go insolvent at that time? What I didn't understand was why it seemed like it was so difficult for you guys to get, your rights and control back at that time.
We got sold. Well, Atco Records had the Headpins for America, and even though we did go down and play a couple dates down there, yeah, we went with Talking in Your Sleep.
Uh-huh.
Uh, whatever band that was, we did a run down the coast, and Atco came out, and I remember we were playing the Wistmillers Country Club in L.A. for the oh God, what's the name of that band? I Hear Talking in Your Sleep. Anyway, it was the Romantics, and there was a rockabilly band that was on first, I think, at this one particular the Wistmillers Country Club. They had a wire mesh fence in front of the stage. Thank goodness, because they thought the Headpins was, we opened up with a song called Welcome to the Midnight Show, which Brian had written with Bill Henderson for um, Long John Baldry, whose album I did do some backups on, which I've forgotten long about, but just putting it out there. And it's kind of a rockabilly kind of tune. So we did that and then went into Turn It Loud or Dancing. And by the end of the song, I had matches in my hair. There were shoes on the stage. Drinks were being thrown at us. It was like, what? What? Get us out of here. So, yeah, we did, I think, 5 songs that night and then ran off the stage. And the label was there to see us. Some of the playmates from the Playboy Mansion were there to see us. Like, it was crazy. But anyway, so, God, where was I going with that story? Um,
Why it was so hard to
yeah,
get yeah.
I got it back. Thanks. We were, yeah, double platinum here in Canada. Overall, I think we've gone 4 times platinum here in Canada by now, this date here today. But so things were going great in Canada. But what we realized is that Atco Records didn't have the product in the stores,
Uh,
so nobody could buy it. So they dropped the ball, and realizing they dropped the ball, they also let us go, as far as that's what they were telling me, as an underling who didn't need to know anything, which was very much the case a lot of the time. Uh, and granted, remember, I was the only one signed and the only one held accountable, but I didn't know anything. So then that's when MCA out of Los Angeles picked up the band, and we did the second album under them and the third album under MCA. So I hope that answers your question.
yeah, absolutely. So when you got picked up again, was it still just you that was signed in name? Is that why you ended up getting sued?
No, by then Brian had left Chilliwack, and he was back with the Headpins full time, and he was the one going to the meetings and the one signing the contracts, even though the three of us, Brian and myself, signed the contracts for the next 2 albums. Yeah. And why I got sued,
Yeah. How did you get stuck with it?
well, in the end of '85, we had just finished the ZZ Top tour here across Canada, and Brian and I were starting to butt heads about certain things that were going on again, standing up for what I believed in, but whether it's a childish thing to say or not, or just reality, is that I was not allowed to have an opinion. I was still the underling, and I was to keep my mouth shut, to be heard and not seen, or seen and not heard.
Uh-huh.
And I made a comment one night in a restaurant that he didn't agree with, which, strangely enough, I was defending ZZ Top when they were being just asses to us that whole tour. And yeah, we got to Vancouver, did the 2 nights in Vancouver with ZZ Top, and I got a phone call from the then manager saying we have to have a meeting. Um, and the next day I went in for the meeting, and I got told that MCA Records had picked me up as a solo artist and dropped the Headpins. And I went down to LA, did some writing down in LA for them. They flew me over to England, where I recorded 6 tracks in Ridge Farm Studio, and then Eel Pie, which is Pete Townsend's studio. I was with Pete every day. We didn't become friends, but he was there at his studio every day. And halfway through that, the gentleman who signed me as a solo artist got canned from MCA. I flew home to write some more tunes. and Eel Pie called saying, "We haven't heard from MCA for 3 weeks or however long it was. You're supposed to be coming back. Are you coming back? What's going on?" So my manager at the time and I flew to LA to find out what was going on, and we found out that Tom had been fired. There was a new A&R man, and he said, "It's between you and this 16-year-old who's brand new to the industry, but it was his artist, whereas I was someone else's artist." And he said, "It's between the two of you because I'm going to break a female singer this year." And I mistakenly thought, well, they got 80, 100 American dollars into this record so far. They're not going to let me go. So we said, well, we'd like to know right now. And he said, okay, well, I'm going to go with Tiffany. So Tiffany was my was my nemesis at the time. So I flew home without a deal. And yeah, it was about 6 or 7 months after that that I talked with Bruce Allen, because I got told to go talk with Bruce Allen. He has something to say to you. And so we went in and had a meeting, and he asked, has your manager, who was his partner, but they had separated, told you about Van Halen? I think you should be down there for an audition with Van Halen. And I'm like, I've been trying to get an audition and asking him to get me one, but he won't. And he says, oh, I'd have had you down there right away. And by the way, did he tell you about um, Keith Emerson calling me a couple months back looking for the singer for the Headpins? I said, no. And Asia came out shortly after that. So I might possibly have been a singer for Asia. I don't know, but it's just like, wow. And it was after that, my then manager found out I'd talked with Bruce, his ex-partner, and I got dropped and immediately sued for the headpin debt. So there you go.
That
Yeah.
is wild. I mean, life happens for us, not to us. It doesn't kill us, makes us stronger. This is a good point for me to ask, what having gone through the industry, I mean, obviously it's different now than it was then in some regards, at least. Uh, what's one thing that you wish you knew going into all of this stuff? Like, what's something that you would advise aspiring artists now to avoid maybe some of the situations that you got yourself into or found yourself in?
What's different now is there's documentaries and books and shows saying just how one-sided the industry is. So read those books, watch those documentaries, figure out what lawyers are all about. I mean, when I signed my contract, my management deal with that manager, I was just 20 years old, and I'm like, I don't have a manager. And he said, not a problem. You can use mine. So I went into his manager to sign a management deal with this man and his manager, no one acting for me, which is really, really not smart. I didn't know. And his words of wisdom to me were, if you don't sign the deal, what do you think's going to happen to your career? So right there, that was step number one. I should have got my own manager, or um, do what I did, which was, okay, well, exactly. You don't, pardon my language, piss off the people that have the money and run the business, which I have done now many, many times because I didn't learn my lesson. But yeah, so find out how it works. And there's lots of documentation of how the industry works now. One of the biggest difference, I think, is record companies don't run the industry anymore. Streaming services do. And yeah, it's a roll of the dice, being in the right place at the right time. I don't know how you can learn that other than being in as many places as you can be at one time. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Uh, don't have your own opinion. I
No,
don't know.
I think it's important to have your opinion. I think it's important to speak up for your values and your beliefs. And if you don't, then no one will ever say that. Revolution starts with the few, not the many. And if one person doesn't speak up, then no one will. ironically, usually when one person speaks up and other people can see, themselves there or believe in the cause, then it starts to gain momentum. So I don't think that you should have not spoken up. I I do agree that technology is a huge disruptor and the industry is different now than it was before, and it's only going to continue to get different as technology increases.
Mhm.
Um, I'm hopeful that there's going to be a lot more by the people for the people in the future too. Um, Creating your own luck. That's another really valuable lesson that you said. You were constantly trying hard and being in so many different spots. That is creating those opportunities. That is creating the luck. And it doesn't happen by sitting on the couch. You have to put yourself out there. So you've been doing all the things for a while, and I think that that's, invaluable advice for anyone that's listening. Let me ask you, like, you toured with Kiss and Whitesnake and Aerosmith and Heart, and you've basically rubbed elbows with everyone that was relevant in rock and roll at that time. And then we're at a very, very high point in your career for things to change. What was that like? How did you handle it? Yeah, and I'm curious on a philosophical level how you handled it because it's very hard to, like I said earlier, get back up.
I was lucky enough that throughout the time, the 5 years I was with the Headpins, we had a co-manager, and I ended up falling in love with the co-manager. And when they found out the two of us were an item, they made him either quit or quit me. And he decided to quit. And he went on to, having been a sideman to Bruce Allen and then with Sam Feldman for years, he started his own business, and he has been my confidant in my, what do you think? Well, we've been married 41 years now. So it, that was whether it was intentional or lucky or however you want to put that, he's been a guiding light and helped me get through situations that were, we'll get through this, we'll figure this out. So that was lucky. And if not for him, again, it's just the desire, the sensation, the knowing how good it feels to be on stage singing.
Yeah.
That's it was just I'm not gonna let that man, and usually it's a man, I'm sorry to say, tell me that, I'm gonna do my best to keep you from singing, which I have been told a lot lately. And, it's like, it when someone tells me I can't do something, I'm more likely to have the inspiration to go do that just to prove them wrong. Now, whether that's a bad trait to have or not, it's probably kept me going and kept me banging my head against the wall for many years. But I think it is part of my nature. Just, you can't tell me I can't do that. So,
Yeah. And we talked about that before. I love that you went, into your soft side a little bit, that you had love and support from someone that you share love with that I guess allowed you to find a little bit of a footing. And then from that point forward, if I'm not mistaken, that's when you kind of dove into family and had children, and that love blossomed. You created life, you created a family around there. How much? I mean, it's very clear how much your husband supports and loves you and encourages you. Your kids play a huge factor in that as well, into like continuing and trying to do what's right.
oh, absolutely. Well, like most children of uh, parents who have a social or a visual life in entertainment or whatever. Yeah, whatever. That's my kids. Um, as they are now young adults in their mid 20s and over, they're starting to realize that not all parents have that or are that, and I just giggle inside when my sons will wear an old headpin shirt with my face on it or something, or even one of my new projects with me on it. It's because they wouldn't have done that as a teenager, not a
Yeah.
hope in hell, but they're past that in their life now, and they are very, it's yeah, it's very sweet to see that they do. Hey, mom, you were pretty cool back then, so I'm grateful for that. But yeah,
As a parent, totally relate. I have not been a perfect man. You know, we all make mistakes. We're fallible. That's part of our human experience. And now that my kids are getting older, every time I look at them, I ask myself, like, what are my decisions going to be? How am I going to respond to the situation? Because I want to be the best example for them possible in their growth. And so when I get frustrated, I remind myself to not be frustrated because you can choose love and find a different way out of the situation. Similar to you, I want to do what's right. I want to do what's right for this industry and for this world as a whole, you know, not just musicians, but for just all people in general. And I think that we are going to see tremendous change over the next decade. I think that there is a lot of old guard that is holding on to things because, you know, fear of loss of power, fear of loss of status, fear of loss of money, whatever it is, but that will evaporate and we will forge forward with an industry built on love for artists. And I think that we need people like you to speak out and to talk about, even to this day, the fact that you're facing bullshit and that's not cool.
but it's a fact of life, and yeah. I could say so much more, but I won't because I quite literally don't have the money to fight in court over something that I can say right now. So, and I know that these people do. So, yeah, rebuilding, rebuilding my career again for the fifth, if not sixth time at 66. It's becoming more of a challenge than it was before, just because I'm an old person. Uh, I think of my parents at 66 and it's like, wow, it's a different life today because at
Mhm.
66 they were old. And I mean, I don't feel that old, but my body's starting to show signs of being that old. So I continue to work out and I golf a fair amount. And I don't do taekwondo anymore, but through taekwondo, I've for 10 years now, I developed a workout, all of my own creation called Zenetics, and it's finding your Zen through athletics. And I had a program, I put it together, and it's a 90-minute program, and I taught it for 4 years in the taekwondo school after hours. And eventually I didn't want to get up at the hours that I had to teach to do it, so I continue to do it in my basement by myself, and it's keeping me somewhat in shape. Although a lot of sitting around through COVID and stuff has, has taken its toll. I'm trying to get myself back into the shape I was in pre-COVID, but as you age, those abilities to form muscle and stuff like
Mhm.
that, it gets hindered, yeah, whatever. I'm doing what I can do to continue to move forward. As I've mentioned, it took 2 years to put True Story together, and it starts at me with a picture at that lake listening to my dad sing, and it tells the story to present day with it's 21 songs and 21 custom made videos. And in between each song that the band plays live, there is footage and documentation that I explain and I talk about, and as well as the editing in the videos are newspaper clippings and pictures. And it's 2 years it took me to finally put it together. We've done it now live 5 times. And I got to say, the audience has been really, really gracious after the show when we go out to greet them. And they're like, this is so good, Darby. This is like, wow, I had no idea. And, um, yeah, I'm really proud of it. And I hope that next year you have to book the soft seaters because that's where we have to play because you need the screen. and they're booked a year in advance, if not more. So getting our together to get that done and the amount of money you need to be a independent artist, bringing those in. We're looking for funding and um, just it's another challenge, another hill to climb, and we're attempting to do it. And not to mention, I have a side project that I started just before COVID. We started in November of 2019. We got 4 rehearsals in when March 2020 happened, and we continued to rehearse whenever the lockdowns were off. And it's what you would call yacht rock. So you had mentioned a softer side of me. This is definitely a softer side of me. We do songs like grooving on a Sunday afternoon, stuff like that. I've got the list here. We're going into rehearsal in a couple of days. Um, uh, Help Me by Joni Mitchell, and Cry Me a River by Julie London, stuff like that. We all sit in a chair, and we put it together to play the wineries where people didn't have to get up to dance. They could just grab their wine, sit back, put their feet up and listen. The players I have are just phenomenal. Dennis Marsenko, who toured the world with Colin James and Katie Lang, is the bass player. I'm just so honored to be in a project with him. And John, our guitar player again, our drummer, Richard, we're hoping to get a bunch of shows this summer. And of course, COVID ended, and then the grapes all died in the Okanagan. So all the work dried
Yeah.
up there. It's been like, what? Ah! But and we're coming back. It's the wineries are back this year. Last year they kind of came back, and this year hopefully they'll be back. So we recorded a live record with them, and yeah, just back to your how do you get luck? Well, as many pokers and as many fires as possible, and hopefully have some fun while you're doing it. And definitely that's what we're achieving or attempting to achieve here.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite smart to be doing that tour through the wineries because then you can do golf on your off days. You get the best of both worlds.
No, yes, yeah, golfing and wine. Yeah.
I had a guest on recently, Tommy D. He is going through a lawsuit with Live Nation. He's in the US, he's a promoter, and his world was turned upside down. And he's, David versus Goliath type battle. You're not the only one fighting a fight. I really admire you for doing so. I respect you for doing so because it is not easy, especially when you don't necessarily have the ability to fight it as easily as other people do. So keep going. I think it's an important thing that you're doing. Truth and love always win. I believe that love always wins. And it might take a century, it might take 2 centuries, but
Mhm.
somehow always comes around. So keep going. Let me ask you a couple quick questions, just because, again, I love to take out guidance for other people. One, how do you keep your voice so well tuned, so well, like in good health, in good repair after so many years of being the queen of scream?
Um, I've been asked that question a lot of times, and I really don't have an adequate answer other than I sing from the bottom of my belly. I push so much air. My throat doesn't have a chance.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, it's coming. But again, as you age, those those things don't heal as easy. I can't do 6 shows in a row anymore. I mean, I could. It would mean that I'm not sounding like the audience who's paying a good dollar, way less than concert fees, but we
Yeah.
charge what? We charge enough that we can actually pay the band when we get home. Um, so yeah,
Mm. Um,
I
it's
don't have an answer. I don't, just somebody gave me this set of lungs and this poor old throat, and it's given me what it's got left, and I'm grateful for it. And yeah, just keep keep singing is is key, and it's been hard since COVID to keep the shows going, and so, that scares me a little bit, but, you know, that's part of the other reason why Press Play, which is the name of the
Right.
yacht rock band, and it's like, "Press Play," it's like, well, that's what you used to do to listen to these songs. You had to press play on the tape recorder. So that's where the name comes from. But anyway, yeah, if anybody's out there thinking about how do I just hum every day, humming is a big one. That's how I warm up for shows is hum and then scream at the top of my lungs. But that's probably not wise unless you've done that a long time. I, yeah, I scare many people with my warm up, but yeah, continue. Just keep singing, just just keep doing it is the wisest thing I can say.
I mean, you have kind of alluded to it throughout this conversation, right? There's a big focus on health and fitness and the keeping going. My dad's 75, he's or mid 70s, and he is a world ranked tennis player for his age group.
Wow.
You know, top 100, he's going to hate me for not knowing the number, but top 100 in the world. And he started tennis late in his career. But the thing that he's done for the last 20 years is he's been consistent. It's consistency, it's habit, it's daily. And I think that sure, your skills might drop off. You can't do 6 shows in a row, but if you keep doing that thing, you keep practicing, it doesn't necessarily go away. Last question before I pass it over to you to sign us off. I really love that you've come back. You got the Darby Mills project. You've got the documentary. You taught yourself how to edit. You're doing socials by yourself. You're clearly like a strong, empowered woman who is not going to take no for an answer and just go bitter end, which is great because that gives you and I time to meet in person and play a round of golf together. So we'll do that. But I find it so hard to answer this for artists. You know, they want to get on shows, they want to get on tours. We're working with these guys now, these young pups, to bring them up. And then you said in that doc, the Tellus one, that we're just booking our own shows, we're paying for our own thing, we're figuring things out. I was really impressed by that. Talk to me just a little bit about what it's like to do that. How do you go to a club and say, hey, I'm going to book, here's the money, and then put on a show?
Well, it's become a lot harder with tariffs and the price of everything going up. I mean, I can probably name or give you an average of one in every three acts that have put their gear on a plane have found it not getting off at the other end. So it's such a crapshoot these days. I don't have, again, words of wisdom, only that you just keep trying. I have men in my band now. These aren't teenagers anymore. We're adults. We're seniors for the most part. Um, it's not a 5 day a week gig anymore for anyone, unless you're on the top echelons of the industry. So most of my guys have, unless they've retired, day jobs. So for us to leave home, there has to be enough money to cover what they've lost leaving their day job, cover the flights, cover hotel rooms, and pay them at the end. So it's a scary proposition to go out on the road. I have bankrolled some of these shows in the past. When you make money on them, it's wonderful. You can put a little bit money in the bank and, save that for the next round. But when you don't make money, it cuts deep. And so we're very cautious of late, especially with True Story, the live documentary, that also came together. I'm sorry, this is going to be a little bit longer maybe than what you thought, but having left the Headpins, I can no longer team up with the bands that I once for 30 years teamed up with because they are part of another camp. I'm an independent artist. Those agencies don't want me on the roster because that means they're not getting their commissions.
Mm.
So as an independent, I have to get shows and support shows on my own draw power. even the Headpins don't play shows on their own. They don't have solo draw power. They're always accompanying another artist or opening for another artist. So doing the documentary or the rockumentary, the true story, um, it was purposeful to get into the soft cedars where those agencies don't have influence over who can play. You can still get bought by those venues, or you can buy those venues. So we've had the pleasure of being bought by a few of them, and the onus of buying our date and paying for everything up front, and hopefully that gets. So that was the point of putting True Story together, is to get out of the clutches of the agencies who I no longer can be or will get represented by. So, yeah, that's my fate in this business, and it's a tough one. And trying to get the ball rolling with this, yeah, we're looking for funding. Anybody out there want to help fund the project? We're here. So, how do you do it? I don't know. By trying, I guess. And it's hmm, whew. Sorry.
I can tell that there's so much that you wish you could say. I do believe that whether the industry likes it or not, whether some of these people like it or not, and I'm not like malicious and I don't know most of the stories, but change is coming. Change is inevitable, and I know that love will win. So they better just accept that. Change is the only constant, and like I said earlier, love wins. So I'm not worried. I know that things are going to get shaken up, and they'll probably get shaken up fast, and heads will spin. Uh, but the good will remain on top. Keep doing what you're doing, Darby. Thank you so much for letting me into your world and giving me so much of your background. It was so fascinating chatting with you. I'm sure we could continue for quite a while, and we'll stay in touch because I do want to play golf. Um,
Awesome.
Over to you for the last word. Where do you want to end us off?
Just in general, you mean? Um,
Yeah, some
well,
sage advice for everyone out there.
well, thank you for giving me this time to share my story, and hopefully bring in some new people to our fold and understand that the business is, excuse me, the business is not easy. It's not fun, but it's exhilarating. And the good days are mostly worth the fight. So, uh, you know, be you, stick to your guns. How many artists have you heard in their own words? I was told no, but I kept going, and look what it's become. So, not that that happens every time, and it doesn't, but what if it does happen to you, and give you the opportunity to live your dreams? So be strong. Don't take no for an answer, and find your people, stick with them, be good to them, and you know f- find your love and live it.